orders. Listen to part of the video.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
We need you to stand up for our laws,
Our Constitution,
And who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
don't give up.
Don't give up.
don't give up the ship.
President Trump wrote, "Their words cannot be allowed to stand. Seditious behavior from traitors, lock them up," unquote. He also reposted, "Hang them. George Washington would." Again, just to remind you, this is the President of the United States at a time of dangerous political violence in this country, suggesting that 6 Democrats be killed for saying that troops shouldn't break any laws. So what were these Democratic lawmakers concerned about? Well, as of today, they would be justifiably concerned about a commander-in-chief saying they should be executed for comments that do not even vaguely meet the definition of sedition. But beyond that, the lawmakers were primarily concerned about U.S. troops being dispatched to American cities and the possibility of troops being told to use violence against American citizens peacefully protesting. They were concerned about the deployment of the military to polling stations. Remember, 5 years ago, when Black Lives Matter protesters were outside the White House in 2020, the president asked privately his military advisors if U.S. troops could shoot those protesters. That's according to then Secretary of Defense Mark Esper.
I was just dumbstruck by it. And he was speaking to General Mark Milley when he asked that question of, can't you just shoot him in the legs or something? And I was, shocked by it. To hear this from the President of the United States saying that we shoot our fellow Americans in the streets of the nation's capital.
Now, that was back when President Trump had a cabinet that included people who were willing to tell him no. Such no longer seems to be the case. And if you were hoping for congressional guardrails of any sort, well, if wishes were horses, rides would be free. Today, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, defended Trump's posts, calling for his congressional colleagues to be executed. He called the Democrats' video wildly inappropriate. And here is what the White House press secretary had to say.
Just to be clear, does the president want to execute members of Congress?
No. Let's be clear about what the president is responding to, because many in this room want to talk about the president's response, but not what brought the president to responding in this way. We have 1.3 active duty service members in this country, and if they hear this radical message from sitting members of Congress, that could inspire chaos and it could incite violence.
There is a disciplinary track in the U.S. military for service members who disobey orders, and they can ultimately be charged with insubordination. There is a mechanism for this. If Caroline Leavitt is worried about messages that could incite chaos and inspire violence, well, that call is coming from inside the House, the White House. Now, this outburst comes after quite a week for President Trump, whose poll numbers are sinking lower while the world girds for the release of the Epstein files that he and his administration fought so hard to keep us all from seeing. When one woman reporter asked the president about those files a few days ago, he said to her, quote, "Quiet, piggy." To another woman reporter, he insulted her as a bad person and a bad reporter. She happens to be a good person and a good reporter. He also would not criticize neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes when asked, and he seemed to support the notion of conservative voices platforming Nick Fuentes without any pushback or criticism. He also got mad at the press for asking about the fact that U.S. intelligence agencies assessed that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, whom the president welcomed with open arms into the White House this week, that MBS ordered the murder of a Washington Post columnist. And then the president criticized the murdered columnist, almost suggesting that he had it coming. All of this just in the last 6 days. And folks, it's only Thursday. Joining us now, House Armed Services Committee member and Democrat from New Hampshire's 2nd Congressional District, Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander. Congresswoman, you're one of the 6 Democrats in that video. I want your reaction to what the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said in this briefing. Take a listen.
Maggie Goodlander was a naval officer, and notably, she is also the wife of Joe Biden's national security former advisor, Jake Sullivan. And so these members knew what they were doing. That is a very, very dangerous message, and it perhaps is punishable by law.
What's your response, Congressman?
Well, Jake, thanks for having me. Look, I never thought that simply and clearly stating federal law would ever cause the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, to threaten violence against me and members of Congress. Look, our message is clear to our service members, and I think it's a really important one in this moment. Our laws are clear. We all take an oath to the same Constitution, and it is our responsibility as the ones who write the laws to be clear about what they say. The Uniform Code of Military Justice is crystal clear on this point. It is the obligation of every service member to obey lawful orders and lawful orders only. And that's our simple and clear message, and it's an important one because there are legitimate concerns that this president is going to issue and has issued unlawful orders to American troops who are operating on American soil. That's just not who we are as a country, and these kinds of threats of violence are not who we are as a country.
So can you give an example of an unlawful order that you think he has issued?
Well, Jake, I think you cited one at the very beginning of this show. We know if we take a look at the track record of the first Trump administration, what we saw, and I served under 3 presidents of different parties, including under President Trump, under 6 separate secretaries of defense. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper was asked to carry out a set of orders that he thought did not comply with the law. He was not prepared to support the invocation of the Insurrection Act. He was not prepared to carry out an order to send American troops on peaceful protesters. And look, this is a basic set of judgments, and it's a core American and constitutional principle. Public trust is essential to public safety and to our national security. And the public and our service members who have been put in an impossible situation right now need to know that Congress has got their back. It's what I would want to hear if I were still serving in the Navy, and that is our simple and clear message.
So you served as an intelligence officer in the Navy Reserve for more than a decade. Did you ever get an order that you thought was illegal?
Jake, I did not. And look, we are in new terrain here. We see a President of the United States and a Secretary of Defense who are testing the boundaries of the basic and core principles of our Constitution. When Secretary Hegseth appeared before the House Armed Services Committee, I asked him a very simple question, a question that has only one right answer. I asked him if he would obey a decision of the United States Supreme Court. He refused to commit to doing so. This is stunning. This is downright dangerous. And that is the brave new world that we're all living through. But our commitment to our service members and to our Constitution is clear. And that is, we will not give up the ship.
At this point, I think we're all familiar with the term stochastic terrorism, but just in case people out there don't know, it's when somebody in power or with a megaphone starts criticizing somebody else, and there is violence committed against that person, and it can't be directly tied to the calls for violence or criticism, but it is related. Senate Democratic leader Schumer says that he has called Capitol Police to give extra protection to Democrats after Trump's remarks. Are you worried about your safety?
Jake, it's hard not to be when the President of the United States threatens you with violence, but the bottom line is this is not about me. This is not about any other member of Congress. This is about our commitment to the Constitution, and it's about a clear statement of federal law. This is a moment for moral clarity and for legal clarity, and that is what we're doing here. Our service members need to know that we've got their back. We've got their back as they uphold their oath, their sacred obligation to our Constitution, and as they uphold their basic obligation to comply with federal law. And the federal law is clear. Lawful orders are to be obeyed, and only lawful orders are to be obeyed.
Freshman Congresswoman and Naval Reservist Maggie Goodlander, thank you so much. Appreciate your time, Congresswoman. Coming up next, the man who was Attorney General Pam Bondi's top advisor up until a few weeks ago. What he can tell us about the Epstein files and how much the Justice Department might reveal, plus the talk across America about Trump's economic policies, what a hairdresser in a swing district in Pennsylvania is telling her clients to do to help them stretch a dollar.
One must ask the question, why has things elevated into the level what they are right now? in regards towards such division. Basically, the federal government being polarized. What has disrupted or erupted that has caused such life and limb to our federal government? Today, the flag here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 3255, flies at high staff because of a vice president being put to rest today in the ground. We conduct ourselves for the betterment of the good, regardless whether we like it or not, regardless whether we like a person or not. And whenever our rules of engagement change from that, then we must stop and analyze ourselves.
What you were being asked to do is in violation of the law. Know that we have your backs. We will protect you. The fact that they are trying to be on their side and offer that level of Article 1 protection, to only then have the President of the United States make them the target, tells you who is actually on the side of the everyman.
But more than that, more than them just having their backs, the Constitution has their backs. Mm-hmm. It is manifestly illegal to obey an unconstitutional order. That's in the Law of War manual. That's in the criminal code of the military. They're just stating the facts. What's so awful about this, and we've talked about it 10,000 times, is that you have members of Congress, you have the Speaker of the House that don't know the law, that don't know the Constitution, that this has been the case since 1950, that you cannot obey an unconstitutional law. That's the oath that everyone of the military takes. That's the oath that they take as well. That's the oath that civil servants take. That's part of our system. That's core to our system. I agree. It takes moral courage to say that, but it shouldn't have to, because it is just following the law.
Right. I actually think there is something messaging-wise here, which is perhaps they need to put out videos once a week that remind us what the Constitution actually says. In this case, the stakes are extraordinarily high, and there was a news hook. But I think that the reminder, to your point about civics education and a reset on what is normal, has value. I want you, Secretary, to listen to this exchange. It's between Senator Slotkin and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. It's from back in June.
Have you given the order to be able to shoot at unarmed protesters in any way? Have you given the order that they can use lethal force against unarmed? I want the answer to be no. Please tell me it's no. Have you given the order?
Senator, I'd be careful what you read in books and believing it, except for the Bible.
Oh, my God.
It's very Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. Like, books? Who reads those? Like, not I. Sir, you went to Princeton. You read at least one book. Like, it is a reminder, though, that the use of force... Mm-hmm. We're talking about, in this case, people who are extraordinarily powerful. We're talking about U.S. senators, members of Congress. But there is a through line from them to ordinary Americans who this administration believes they have the power to use their forces against.
Yes, exactly. And that's what's so terrifying about it. And then also the through line, the message that all of this sends to others who are watching the threats, watching the potential for threats, watching the president call for these threats, is that it connects to other residents or citizens who are seeing these calls for violence and potentially going to take it into their own hands to exert violence against these elected officials who are simply trying to hold our elected officials accountable, who are simply trying to call into account these members of the administration who are doing illegal things and calling on others to do illegal things. So to me, the metastasization of all of this as well is quite terrifying for those leaders who are standing up and simply asking the important questions and demanding those answers.
Especially because this is not theoretical. Right. Yeah. At this point, you have January 6 rioters who were pardoned by this president who, upon their release, have threatened to kill sitting members of Congress. So, I mean, I think sometimes they act like this is all fantasy land and words and retweets don't have value or meaning. You are the president of the United States of America. You have the largest bully pulpit on the globe. And this is how you're choosing to use it. And I know that at at this point. We shouldn't be surprised. And we've seen it a million times. And yet every time it should be as shocking as the first time that he does not understand the power of his office.
Absolutely. And the irony, although that's too mild a word, is that he is the one doing something unconstitutional by suggesting the extrajudicial killing of members of Congress. I mean, the language of our country has been so corroded by the fact that he's ignorant, that he's emotional, that he can't govern his own speech, and then people echo it. And of course, you know, the First Amendment does protect that kind of thing, but there's no doubt that violent language in some cases induces violent behavior. And that's the thing that we have to be very, very cautious about now.
Okay, all the secretaries are staying with me. No one's going anywhere. When we return, a stunning policy change at the United States Coast Guard. We're starting next month.
Okay, I want to bring up something that I think is crucial pertaining to what locally happened to me right here, in which, if anybody knows anything about my testimony, knows it to be factual, because you can't go around blabbing out stuff, making false accusations about your testimony if you can't back it and prove it. In 2005, I was charged with falsifying files with ex-chief David Moore in Martin, Tennessee, the Martin PD. Simply because I was passing out Bible literature. Simply because I made a reference to an individual that worked at Pickles towards basically being a cashier, probably along about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, because I'd been on a run towards dropping off more material, that because of the controversialness in what I had been doing and had been doing and was doing was so humongous that it possibly was going to cause me to be on the Channel 6 News of an explosion of controversy. Because of that, they sought of an unwarranted warrant of going from Martin, Tennessee, Martin PD, driving all the way to Huntington, Tennessee, in Carroll County, and having me arrested while I was working, dragging me back to the precinct, and even though I explained to them that I had no harmful intent by using the word explosion, they went ahead and pursued the charges anyway. So whenever the President of the United States discusses and talks about the enemy from within, that's exactly what has occurred here, especially whenever you're trying to go up against a person's First Amendment right in preaching and teaching out of the same Bible that they supposedly believe in, which is the King James. This isn't a fantasy of mine. This isn't some sort of drawn up illusion. This actually occurred in 2005 that basically costed my wife to leave my life. It costed me bankruptcy, and it costed me to the degree that I had to leave Weakley County, Tennessee, and move to Davidson County, Tennessee, in which after me moving to Davidson County, Tennessee, up in Nashville, 3 or 4 months into me moving up there, shortly after Katrina hit, once more I was targeted unwarrantedly by Homeland Security of accusing me of putting chains around the church doors simply because of me dropping off material at these churches. And it was one particular church, I guess, that put out a warrant for my arrest, and I didn't realize that I had a warrant for my arrest until like a few years later, pertaining to a synagogue up in Nashville, Tennessee, a Jewish synagogue that did put out a warrant. They did arrest me later whenever I was up in, I think it's Knoxville, Tennessee. I may be incorrect about the county. Anyways, they drugged me back to Nashville, and basically nobody was there to support the warrant. That actually occurred. I can prove that on the books pertaining to my First Amendment rights. My First Amendment rights was being attacked by charging me with falsifying files, even though I had not made no alleged threat.
U.S. troops who died fighting in World War II as a hate symbol, according to a new policy that takes effect next month. Instead, the Coast Guard will classify the Nazi-era insignia as potentially divisive under its new guidelines. The new policy, set to take effect December 15th, similarly downgrades the definition of nooses and the Confederate flag, though display of the latter remains banned, according to documents reviewed by the Washington Post. The Post goes on to make clear the new guidance says that if a potentially divisive symbol is reported, supervisors should inquire about it. After consulting their legal office, they may order the symbol's removal, but there's no further guidance requiring that it be taken down. We are back with Secretary Benson and with...
And that's what should have occurred that did not occur pertaining to my arrest in Carroll County, especially with an officer coming from another county. It should have been supervised by a Carroll County deputy, and it was not. They walked into Jimmy Darnell and David Lloyd's business pertaining to First Choice Body Shop and apprehended me under the pretenses of falsifying files.
War generation like me, the idea of a swastika being something that was acceptable, or a noose for that matter, or the Confederate flag, was just something that was absolutely unthinkable. And it goes to what we were talking about in the last segment, the kind of corrosion of public dialogue or public discourse in the country, that something that is so hateful, that is the definition of a hate symbol, is something that's downgraded to something else because there are people who must be sympathetic to it and feel like they will be offended if a swastika is considered a hate symbol. That's just, again, unthinkable.
Jocelyn, you started your career at the Southern Poverty Law Center. These are questions you've spent a lot of time thinking about. How do we get to the point where not only is this codified, but it's even a question worth revisiting?
Yeah, I mean, we need to be unequivocal about this as a country. And yeah, I started my career investigating extremists and extremist organizations. Those symbols are hate symbols. They generate hate. They communicate hate. They're not potentially divisive. They are hatefully divisive. And for any element of our official policies to equivocate about that is un-American. But then secondly, my other reaction, in addition, as being a military spouse, being afraid for the troops that will be put in harm's way within battalions where they need to be unified because of this. The other thing that I was struck by was how, when I travel around Michigan, this is not what they're talking about. People are talking about the fact that healthcare premiums are about to go skyrocketing, right? Too many mothers have to choose between childcare and medicine and putting food on the table. And that's what our administration, our presidential administrations should be talking about. And instead, they're ordering decisions like this that are going to make our troops less safe. It's really infuriating, and again, in my view, speaks to the need why other leaders, frankly, Republican leaders and Democrats, need to be calling this out as clear hate speech, as clear hate symbols, and remind the president and every other leader that what we should be doing is making life more affordable for Americans.
Okay. My brother and I, in 2014, we put up a cross out here on the front of the building and leaned it to the side, indicating a broken cross that in actuality had nothing to do and has nothing to do with the Southern Cross pertaining to the Stars and Bars. If anything, I myself am against the Stars and Bars because the Stars and Bars represented war, represented bloodshed. I am anti-war. I am for peace, not war. Okay? But if anything symbolizes a hate symbol, and I know I'm going to get a lot of controversy over me saying this, but the fact of the matter is the cross is to represent the system of the old Roman Empire that used to use capital punishment offenses upon two people that was lawbreakers, people committing crimes pertaining to the cross. The same as you would be if it was a electric chair or a gas chamber or a hangman's noose. Why did I put that, or why did my brother and I put that cross up and lean it sideways? Because the system, in and of itself, the system of law and order has been broken. Now, if you're a criminal, and that's your lifestyle, is to break the laws of the land, then you're going to look at that cross towards it being a hate symbol. Why? Because the cross itself represents the system, the original system, which is not to defy the law, but to obey the law. But whenever the system is no longer appropriating itself in the eyes of the people, then it is considered a broken system. And I hope that people that listen to this will not take it out of context because of what I'm saying, because to me, the cross, the same as most every other American that's been taught out of the King James Version, is a symbol of that in which what happened to Christ, which was death. It was a deathly symbol. But yet now we don't see people walking around with images of gas chambers around their necks pertaining to necklaces or hangman nooses ordinarily or electric chairs. But we see them hanging crosses around their necks all the time. Jesus was about love. The system was about hate. Or the system was about punishing people that disagreed with the system at that time whenever they was using the cross for capital punishment offenses.
To members of our military who are signing up to guard and protect all of us.
I'm glad that you got us on this topic because we're going to continue talking about this a little bit. Jocelyn Benson, thank you so much for being with us. Rick, you're sticking with me when we return. We've been talking about it. Voters are increasingly rejecting Donald Trump's handling of the economy. It is no wonder as he continues to dismiss and mock the real concerns of American.
There's so many hits and misses pertaining to what's going on right now with this administration. Some of the things that Donald Trump is engaged in, I support. But a lot of the things that Donald Trump is engaged in, I do not support. I do not support in allowing for a criminal to come over here that basically masterminded or part of the criminal mafia that instituted 9/11 that killed almost 3,000 people pertaining to 9/11. There was controversy in the White House whenever they was going to bring the Taliban over to the White House and have some sort of a meeting. It created a great deal of controversy. Well, they went ahead and done the agreement with the Taliban on Donald Trump's first watch. That caused Mr. Biden's second watch to take the blame for pertaining to the Afghanistan war of the way that we walked out and didn't give enough time in executing proper safety standards that we should have done. I mean, whenever you've seen people clinging on to big military base airplanes, hanging on for dear life, and then once they got up and the winds was going so strong that they couldn't hang on no longer, and you've seen them falling from the airplane, that pretty well tells you the seriousness of what them people was going through at that time that wanted to leave that area because they knowed what was coming around the corner. And sure enough, 11 days later, what happened? After the United States military force left Afghanistan, the people that we supposedly reformed and trained to take care of themselves reneged and surrendered back over to the Taliban. There is things going on in this White House that I believe goes beyond gross negligence. There's some things going on pertaining to our court system here in America that is considered a broken system. As I've said before, and I'll say again, the original cross that executed Jesus Christ was a system put in place to execute the deadliest of the deadliest criminals out there that was not abiding by the system. That was not abiding by the system. Today, we've got so many different attorneys that will kind of react against the system to the point that it makes the system a mockery right here in the United States. And I want to be clear about this. If my brother and I was mocking anything about putting that cross sideways, leaning way over to one side, it was not in correspondence of mocking our Savior, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. It was not mocking the opportunity that the Father had for the love for humanity through Jesus Christ that allowed for Jesus Christ to go through that, but it was mocking the broken system here in America. And this is only correspondence and proof of it. Please listen.
Ordered the murder and dismemberment of an American journalist. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman appears to be having some difficulty relating to the people who elected him because of their concerns about, being able to pay their bills. Take a look.
We're also making incredible strides to make America affordable again. That's a new word that they're using, affordability. But they came up with a new word, affordability. And they look at we are all about affordability.
Trump seems almost as unfamiliar with
affordability is the word that most middle class and poor class citizens use on a day-to-day level, because it has reached the point today that things are now more unaffordable than they are affordable. See, it don't register with the rich man's mind pertaining to affordability, because everything that he's ever desired, he could afford. No wonder it don't fit into his category or his vocabulary.
And Clinton. Gene Sperling. Rick is still with me. Gene, how affordable, to use a new word, is Donald Trump's America right now?
His response to this is just so stunning, just from kind of a political self-interest point. I mean, let's remember, the criticism of President Biden was not that he was not focused on affordability. He had an entire agenda of lowering energy prices, prescription drugs, child care, health care. The argument was simply that he wanted to boast about the fact that they had record job growth and historically low uninflation. And it was seen that even talking about the positive things might have felt out of touch. So that's the criticism here. Now you have a president who comes in who does not have a particularly strong economy, who was inheriting an economy where it was projected widely. This isn't just me saying this. This is Goldman Sachs, IMF, OECD. Inflation was on the way down to 2%. Everybody projected that. He comes in and then puts in a policy that explicitly raises cost on average people. And it's striking how many Americans understand what tariffs are and that they are raising your prices. So what's kind of stunning is he didn't learn any lesson. He actually flaunted affordability. And now at a time when he has an economy that is very iffy job numbers, not particularly strong, he's not just de-emphasizing affordability, he's mocking it. And people know. I mean, if you ask, what's the one thing they've done that might actually help on affordability? It is admitting that their tariffs on things like coffee and bananas made no sense at all. We can't even grow them there. So their only one affordability measure that might work at all is an admission that tariffs were raising prices, that they didn't make sense, and that now they're pulling it back. So just on pure political self-interest, it's just stunning that he has, in a sense, mocked the affordability issue the entire term, and now he's literally mocking it as a punchline.
Not only that, but he's mocking our intelligence by thinking that we're not smart enough to hear this and figure out how controversial that it is by basically being an oxymoron. The word affordability has been primarily, most politicians run for whatever office since basically I can remember being in America, towards seeing how people run for different offices. Affordability, affordability, affordability. or we're going to charge you less for your taxes. We're going to help you in this area. We're going to help you in that area. So the whole concept about affordability is part of our strategy towards bettering people's lives. And now you got somebody coming onto the scene saying it's a new word? Huh. It may be a new word to the richest of the richest, but it ain't a new word to the working class and the middle class and the poor class. Matter of fact, it's more of a common word than it is an unfamiliar word.
Economy is stupid, and you know the affordability thing. I mean, there's nothing like when someone, not a person who doesn't know very much and learns a new word, they want to say that word all the time. It's like suddenly it's a new thing. But affordability basically has been the policy of the Democratic Party for decades. I mean, real wages have been stagnant for 25 or 30 years.
There you go.
Every political party
See
needs to be able to say, look, I'm going to make your life more affordable. And
right.
That's what happened in New York City
More
with
pleasant.
Mr. Mamdani becoming mayor. That really is the core value of the Democratic Party, and hopefully it will be seen as such.
I want you to take a listen, Gene. The vice president was asked about all of this. This is earlier today, and this is the plea that he made to the American public. Take a look.
Even though we've made incredible progress, we understand that there's a lot more work to do. And the thing that I'd ask for the American people is a little bit of patience. This economy was not harmed in 10 months.
Wait, so first of all, that's just not true that the economy was not harmed. I also think it is precious for him to be asking patience, because it is an admission that they have not been effective in actually executing on what it is they promised the American people.
Let me bring some facts.
Not only that, but the fact of the matter is people can't just stop their lives in saying, hey, I no longer want to get my house payment, to have to make my house payment this month. Hey, I no longer want to make my car payment. Is that okay with the banks? They're not going to agree with that. You can't just stop your life in the middle of midstream pertaining to the bills that you already are paying on, and now you dump all these other burdens on top of the people. How do you expect for them to respond and react?
% annualized and 3.6% over the last 3 months. So Vance and the Secretary of Treasury have all made this point. But what the facts show is that the longer they're in office, the worse things get. And not out of bad luck, out of explicit policies that raise prices on consumer goods. And, you know, you showed that Fox poll and other polls. Well, I'll be the economics person here and look at the University of Michigan consumer sentiment. This is a number that has come out for 47 years. The current condition in the last survey was the worst ever. I mean, worse than 9/11, worse than the pandemic, worse than the financial crisis. So this is not just a bad poll. This is like widely seen. And if you ask what is their one big win they would brag about, I guess it is that they prevented Democrats from explicitly lowering healthcare premiums and healthcare prices as part of a government shutdown. Now, I was part of the 95 government shutdown, and when you win a shutdown battle, it's supposed to be that it helped you politically after you left. And right now, their win is to show everybody that they stood firm and helped let healthcare prices rise and rise.
Gene Sperling, Rick Singal, thank you for helping me get acquainted with this new...
In other words, instead of getting better, things remotely has gotten worse. Of course, if you're in Donald Trump's league, and you've never had to have need of any want, the word affordability will probably be a new concept to your way of thinking. But it's not a new concept to, I'm going to say, over 85 to 90% of the American people in response towards the middle class, the working class, and the poor class, especially the retirees and those that is drawing a disability check. Now this has offset their lifestyle to the degree that it's becoming more and more unaffordable versus affordable. In other words, they're making things worser instead of making things better. And to get up there and argue and to tell people what Donald Trump is telling them, especially in giving out threats to those that do voice their opinion in this way, towards going to put out orders of executing those that disagree with Donald Trump, just goes to bear how far out of sync that this guy really is in threatening people over their First Amendment rights. Kind of like what Martin, Tennessee done to me over here in Weakley County in 2005 in response towards them charging me with falsifying files. And if you read the concept laws in behind falsifying files, it means somebody that has implications of being a homegrown terrorist. Somebody that either pulled down a fire alarm in a school or a hospital and there was no fire and you created a panic, or somebody that was in the middle of a theater crying fire, 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 and there is no fire, that created a panic, and the next thing you know, people started a stampede and started harming and hurting one another. That's what they charged me in Martin, Tennessee, in Weakley County, in the state of Tennessee, though I wasn't in no theater, though I didn't pull down a fire alarm. All I was doing was passing out some Bible literature to a convenience store teller. To think that that costed me my divorce, to think that that costed me well over $500,000 pertaining to me having to file for bankruptcy, in addition to the money that should have went towards me pertaining to my wife at that time profit sharing out of Walmart, to think that I had to move plumb out of the Weakley County up into Davidson County just to escape that kind of scrutiny is appalling. And it should be just as much of appalling to anybody else, because if they done it to Dennis James Jackson, they can do it to you. Now we're not just talking about bringing charging upon people's lives. Now we're not talking about just scarring their lives, pertaining to branding them some way or another. Now we're actually talking about executing people. So what's the next level? What's next? Who's next? You have to start asking yourself the question, what's next and who's next? Are they actually going to start lining us up and executing us because we disagree with what's going on today? Because we want to voice our opinions, especially our opinions about our religious beliefs? My friends, we're in a very, very dangerous mode set right now, as this flag flies half-staff over Dick Cheney's burial today. We're in a very, very dangerous spot in America. And if our legal representatives, whether or not they be state or federal, don't stand up to the plate and recognize this, the same as the Jeffrey Osteen problem, and those files not being released properly to the American people pertaining to our laws, we are in big, big, big trouble. There has to be reasoning whenever it comes to executing these laws. There has to be reasoning whenever it comes to going after the illegal immigrants, towards doing more damage to the communities than what you're doing good. There has to be more practicalness in distributing or flexing your muscle pertaining to the federal government that we're not seeing right now. We're not seeing right now. The same as what my brother and I put this heart up that says the battle is not over, but to fight the battle is over, comma, but the fight has just begun in honor of our veterans. Whenever you put in honor of our veterans, you're putting in honor of our Constitution. Whenever you put in honor of our veterans, you're saying in honor of our American laws. Now, whether or not you want to accept that as it being the truth or not, that will be up to you. Beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. One man's junk is another person's treasure. Okay? The fact of the matter is, the cross in its originality was considered part of the system that, yes, was used to demonstrate its power by executing death to those that deserved capital punishment. And it didn't matter if it was over 2,000 years ago or if it was today. Once that system is no longer effective in its laws, then instead of the cross being in the upward right position that it should be, all of a sudden becomes the broken cross. That don't have nothing in the world to do with our salvation other than the fact that Jesus Christ was executed on that cross. And it wouldn't have mattered if Christ would have been executed on the cross. It wouldn't have mattered if Jesus would have been executed by a gas chamber. It wouldn't have mattered if Jesus Christ would have been executed by an electric chair. It wouldn't have mattered if he'd have been executed by hanging. Just so happens, if you go back into the prophecies, not only was it prophesied for him to die this way, but it was also prophesied that not a bone would be broken. But it was also prophesied that he would rise again on the third day. And you know what, brothers and sisters? He did. So even though the Roman Empire was using this system pretty well adequately during the time if people was looked upon as a lawbreaker, in which Jesus Christ was not. Jesus Christ did not deserve to get punished the way that he did. It still shows the ineffectiveness in the system based upon the rule of law and who was actually forcing that upon to humanity during the time that it was being forced upon. Now that chain that you see was painted red, white, and blue. It wasn't painted pink, wasn't painted purple, wasn't painted green, wasn't painted some other bright fluorescent orange or yellow or all white or all black. It was painted red, white, and blue, indicating the American system being broken. Just like whenever I was passing out Bible literature to a teller that worked at Pickles convenience store in Martin, Tennessee. And I was basically marked not only as being insecure, not only as being emotionally insubordinate, but then my own people was trying to mark me as me being a potential homegrown terrorist by charging me with falsifying files. At that point in time, they was walking all over my Constitution, freedom of speech, and they was doing it in their own backyard, in their own system. And the whole time, it was the system that was in violation and not the individual. Now, regarding what had occurred, I just pray to God for all the true born-again believing Christians, not only in America but all over the world. And I just pray to God in honor of those who have made great strides and sacrifices for our laws here in America, in honor of the POWs and the MIAs, those who left and was never heard of again. Those who sacrificed the ultimate sacrifice. Those who were standing up, fighting for the righteousness of that in which what they believed. I just pray to God that we will gain a toehold on what is happening, what has happened, and what could actually happen if we allow for it to fester and grow further out of control. It's sad. It's sad that things has erupted to this degree that started at the core going back 30 plus years ago during Ronald Reagan's administration. It's sad that it's reached a level that now the word violence pertaining to execution gets brought up again and again just because of somebody that voices their opinion or speaks in acknowledgement of that in which what they believe. What are you gabbing about? What are you gabbing about, hen? Huh? What you gabbing about? If there's ever been a time, my friends, that we need to pray for one another and pray for our great nation, it is of today. Not tomorrow, not the day after tomorrow, but today. Thank you for listening. God bless you in your endeavors. May God bless our endeavors towards which way we go from this moment on. And I just pray for peace and utopia coming up on this holiday, that our forefathers pertaining to the Pilgrims that proved their patriotism by being good patriots. Later on, throughout the Revolutionary War, I just thank God in being thankful on this Thanksgiving in the year 2025 as I'm fixing to close. Shalom, and may God have mercy on us all.